Dear translation agencies, there are translators whose work I will gladly revise because I consider them to be good writers and have a good understanding. Um, and we can agree upon terms if I know that it's translated by somebody who measures up, but I would have to be the decider of that. So you'd have to send me a sample of the person's work. You don't have to give any name so that I can make that assessment. Because unfortunately, in current times and with low rates that are being offered, it doesn't seem fair, you see, because if a translation reaches my desk in a certain condition, then I'm going to rewrite it. I have to, because the work that it has to go out with under my responsibility, as somebody did to one of my jobs apparently recently, to my surprise. But so it stands. So it's not fair then. The amount of money that I would be paid for that is ludicrous. So I was offered 40 odd pages on kitchens for €100. Well, if I can do it in a day, I don't mind working a day for €100. I think it's fair enough. I know I'm not going to get rich thinking like that, but it's fine. But the trouble is, it could be easily 2 days and perhaps even longer if it's written in a certain style. I mean, really, if it needs to be redone entirely, it would be 4 days. Hopefully that wouldn't happen. But my history of revisions has not been good, and also for a certain agency, I won't mention the name, but they probably know who they are. They're nice people, but sometimes they're a little bit difficult, I find, because I had to revise I'll never forget it, a sort of narrative about sailing. I think it was some kind of promotional literature written by people in the sailing business. I can't remember in what capacity. They were perhaps boat builders. And it was nautical terminology and sailing terminology. And it was really difficult, actually. And I identified the difficulty straight away when I was sent the text after it had been already, I think, being revised. This is the problem. And, it just was completely inadequate. And when I made that clear, I said, the only way that it has to be rewritten, I had to do that. But there was no money for it at all, and it took me about 3 or 4 hours. And I was able to do it because my sister is a skipper. You need to speak to somebody who sails to do something like that. If you can't speak to them, then you need to read a lot in that field to understand what they're talking about. It's very special language. I think one of the most difficult areas of translation that I've encountered. I think fashion is pretty difficult too, actually, but that's just my own personal slight fear of fashion. It's a tricky area. There are some very tricky areas of translation. If something like that's translated by somebody who doesn't, hasn't got the necessary experience, the result will not be edifying, or hasn't taken the necessary time, because you can be inexperienced but diligent. And if a man or a woman can write, then they presumably can also read. I mean, all this stuff is usually available somewhere now on Google that you have to spend ages researching it. And it's best if you can actually have the opportunity to speak to somebody who goes sailing, because they'll be able to help a bit. So that's my problem with being a reviser. I mean, there's some people that I know who will really enjoy revising their work because I'll be picking up tricks. I might correct something here and there, but that's what a reviser's meant to do. Offer a suggestion, a polite remark, or even identify an error. I mean, I make enough of my own. It's not as though my work isn't flawless. I try. I think I've improved since I went carnivore because I have a better mental focus and a horror, really, of a mistake being found in my work, as has been found in the past. Even though the quality, the general quality, is very good, it's not flawless, and I've found it increasingly difficult to proofread my own words. The risk of doing it is that you gloss something, and it takes a third party to do a final proof. But I think I've eliminated the need for the third party now. I'm using greater diligence in my proofreading. I think so. Latterly, I haven't had anything come back. Although a company for which I translated about springs um, contacted me and said, "Are molle attrazione torsion springs, or are they traction springs?" Because they've been translated in both ways. And my heart dropped, and I thought, oh my Lord, what have I done? But when I went back to look at my translation, I hadn't made that very unforgivable error. I couldn't find it anywhere. And they were always called extension springs, which is what they're generally called. I think they use the word traction springs to describe some wire forms, just like a different type of spring action. It's a very interesting field, actually. And of course, the main ones being the compression springs, the coil springs that you have on your car. And that can be upgraded, actually, and it's something that I'm thinking of doing with the Mazda if I find that I have any money, if I do win the lottery. And if I decide to enter the lottery and then win it, it's getting quite long, isn't it? But yeah, you can get a sort of an upgrade suspension kit, which they fit what they call coilovers, which is a certain type of design of the spring, and it improves the handling apparently. So I might have that done. I don't think it's massively expensive, but it's probably going to be realistically £600 minimum. I'll have to see. Where does all the money go and where does it come from? I know where it goes, but where does it come from?